I feel like a lot of people just have this built up anger when it comes to the case, and when the theories are being dismissed, then they turn to the show and they say, well, the show, did this and did this and did this, and it's wrong and it's wrong and it's making this person look like this, and
there are still questions that they. For example, the timeline of the SUV and when it came to the scene and when witness A passed, like that is still a huge question for me. I can't make it work. I can't make the timeline work. I can't make the order of operations of events that we know that occurred work so that the SUV shows up and witness A shows up after that and she gets to the Beaver Pond by 7:52. I can't make it work. So I think people should be angry. I think that they should demand answers from police.
And what did Art tell you about this?
This is like one of the times when I've emailed Art and I just feel like the kid in the back seat, like saying like, but why? But why? Over and over again. But he didn't have an answer. He doesn't have an answer. His answer is look at the big picture. But the reality is that Maura disappeared within those 19 minutes.
I also hope this is the last time we go over the timeline. I was kind of done with it. Actually, I'll tell you, the first time I was done with it was after the Karen McNamara ride, Maggie.
Yeah.
And then after Cecil Smith's interview, I more or less put it away.
We more or less put it away as well, but there's still the community out there that have some questions. So I think we should just get right into starting at the beginning here at 7:25, according to your official timeline, Art. According to the Grafton County Sheriff's Department log, this is what was plugged in. It had his dispatch at 7:29. He was en route a few seconds later, around the same time, and he arrived at 7:46. That's what's.
He actually got there a lot earlier, and that's in the interview that we did. In fact, I called the state police today to double check that, and they said yes, that's exactly what happened. So Cecil Smith got there earlier than 7:46.
The major point of disagreement is obviously when Smith arrives at the scene.
Sure.
Because Art has him arriving around 7:35, getting out, looking around the car, going to the Westmans, going back out to the SUV, and then radioing back at 7:46.
So Art's timeline hypothesis is that Smith arrived, got out of the car, looked around, saw there was no one in the car, then walked over to the Westmans, spoke to them briefly, comes back to the car, and then at some point radios back, around 7:46, radios back that he is on scene. Mm-hmm. That's Art's theory.
Right.
Which basically would, from his perspective, that explains why Karen saw an SUV at the scene well before 7:46, when Smith in the logs shows up as having been at the scene.
Right, but there's no indication, there's no reason to believe that he broke standard protocol and waited 10, 11 minutes before radioing back.
And he responds, and he doesn't call out immediately when he gets there. He gets out of the vehicle, gets out of his SUV, 001, which was witnessed by the Westmans. He goes to Maura's car, checks around, see if somebody's hurt, and then responds over to the 911 caller's house, which was the Westmans, and we all know how close that is to the traffic accident.
And actually, Art, when I was going back over some of the transcripts today, I was reading the transcript with Chuck, and he said to us that Butch also saw 001. So,
right.
Cecil driving 001. Butch had, when he came over to the scene, he had said, he saw him in that car.
That Butch Atwood said that.
Yeah.
To
so,
who?
Butch said that, according to Chuck West, and that is in the transcripts that we have from the show. So.
Right.
Who did Butch say that to?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember who he said that to.
Why would the Westmans ever think about or notice the number on Smith's car? They didn't leave their house. How would they have even gotten close enough to see it? Atwood, you could say, well, maybe he would have noticed because Smith drove up to him. But they don't claim, I mean, Maggie claims but then retracts that Atwood said he saw 001. And as far as we know, nobody says it. The only information we have that anyone besides Witness A said they saw 001 was Art saying on the show that New Hampshire State Police said the Westmans said it.
Well, and he doesn't even say that. He says he thinks it's the Westmans.
He thinks it's the Westmans, yeah.
So let's just be clear, because what Art said is that the New Hampshire State Police said that a witness saw the SUV 001. He's assuming that it is the Westmans.
A witness, right. Which to me, it's more likely actually that it would be Atwood, right?
Maybe.
If.
Wait. Maybe it's Karen.
Right? Is the witness Witness A?
It probably is. Yeah, because that is the only witness that we're aware of that saw the SUV.
And she's also, other than Butch Atwood, she's the most likely to have seen it.
Mm-hmm. So my guess is that the witness that the New Hampshire State Police have on record is Witness A, not the Westmans.
These three witnesses did not see what happened to Maura. Maura went missing, and they didn't see it. So if they didn't see Maura go missing, they easily could have missed a police officer arriving on scene before Smith. Or they saw a police officer arriving before Smith and didn't know that it was a different police officer than the one who came up and talked to them later on.
Exactly.
You know, they said they saw flashing blue lights. They could have seen flashing blue lights from another police officer. And then a few minutes later, Smith pulls up. They don't even know that anything's happened, that it's a different officer. And then the officer comes up and talks to them.
So 7:27 is a definite timestamp.
Yes.
Okay. And so we have to give Faith some time to explain the situation to the caller. I mean, to Rhonda Marsh, to the woman working the dispatch. So are we safe to say that Cecil probably left at 7:29?
Well, I don't know. I think he was dispatched immediately.
How did Cecil get there so fast then?
Right. Here's the burning question. According to Grafton County, it took him 17 minutes. According to being in that area and any estimated time that you go through for Google Maps or MapQuest or Apple Maps, it's anywhere from 14 to 17 minutes.
Yeah, but you're talking about a cruiser going with the lights and siren. And Karen McNamara, he passed her twice. I mean,
in order for him to pass her twice, he had to take a different route, right? He had to pass her, go off somewhere, and then come back. That's the only way. Well, or it was two different vehicles.
Yes.
So now I suppose you could say, if your argument was, well, yeah, he did that. He went off like he was going somewhere else, and he was going so fast that even doing that, he was able to catch back up with her. But then it begs the question, like, but why did he do that?
But this is what has always been out there. If it's just, if it's not...
Because
I know that's why you guys are asking
right,
it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand,
so what you're actually saying is that Karen Weston lied.
No.
Cecil Smith lied. John Monahan lied.
Right.
Faith Weston lied.
No.
Butch Atwood lied. And the Marat lied.
No. All I'm asking,
Okay.
all I'm asking is, did he come from the police station?
One thing that bothered me a little bit that Art said was that, well, if any of the timeline is off, I forget his exact wording, then we have to believe that Karen McNamara is lying, that John Monahan is lying, that all of the witnesses are lying, that Smith is lying. No, that we don't. We don't have to assume that anyone is lying for another officer to have been there before Smith was. We don't even have to assume that Smith is lying.
Right.
So what's out there right now is that he was definitely coming from Haverhill Police Station. And we can't, as two podcasters, we can't say, no, he wasn't. We have to talk to people who are experts in this so we can put this to bed.
That question would dismiss every other bit of evidence out there.
The SoCo article, I believe, said that Smith was at the station. I think so. I think that's where it came from originally.
I've got a lot of problem with a lot of these articles because a lot of them don't have correct information in them, and they've sort of prolonged the theory or the myth that there's some police involvement. I would really rely on the original police reports in the Grafton County laws to determine exactly who was what, where, and when.
There's the SoCo article that Art doubts the veracity of, but which states that Smith was at the Haverhill Police Department when he was dispatched, and I would just say that the route that he described, Route 10 to Swiftwater, to Sawyer Hill to 112, would line up with him being at or near the Haverhill Police Department, which is on Route 10. So that's not an isolated fact as it was sort of portrayed. There is more information that corroborates, information from Cecil himself, that corroborates the possibility or the likelihood that he was on or near the grounds of the Haverhill Police Department.
And let me just say, part of that problem too is that people who are, making math equations to do this timeline haven't even been up there and done the drive. This was a non-issue to us after we had done the drive, after we physically did the drive doing these speeds.
Thing I think is interesting is that I drove Sawyer Hill Road when I was up there a couple months ago, and it's a dirt road. It's a slightly windy dirt road. He says the reason you take the 4x4 is because of these icy roads, but the shortcut that he used was itself like this rural road that would have slowed him down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say, well, but I was in the 4x4, so it was okay, I could take it. But it's like, yeah, but still, why would you get off a paved road onto a road that's harder to navigate, and it's going back in the opposite direction of where you're going? Like, you have to backtrack. Sawyer Hill Road goes like almost completely opposite Goose Lane Road.
And after Art and I did it, it was like this revelation moment of just like, holy shit, Karen McNamara saw 001, and it was Cecil. There was this very small little window of 5 to 10 minutes that we found, this little teeny wiggle room when we did the drive, backtracking from Beaver Pond, driving the speed that she would have been driving. We even, I think, went a little slower than her, just to give it like that much wiggle room. And it was the exact amount of time that it took for Cecil to get there, walk across the street to the Westmans, talk to them, that Karen had driven by. I mean, it was just so obvious to us that is what happened.
So if we backtrack from where she made the call at Beaver Pond at 7:52, that puts her at the scene around, I say 7:33 to 7:37, depending on how fast she was driving. If she was going the speed limit, she would have arrived at 7:33. If she was speeding a little bit by about 10 miles an hour, she would have arrived at 7:37.
That's, again, just being clear, you're backtracking from the cell phone call at Beaver Pond based on where cell service was possible. Now, you had the end time at 7:37, so that's the end of your window. And how did you arrive at that?
So that was what I thought was the most reasonable window.
For the fastest she could have driven?
Yes.
So how fast was that?
Yeah, so that would have been 43 miles an hour.
Okay, average.
Uh-huh.
From the accident scene to Beaver Pond.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in his timeline, Karen was at the accident scene around 7:38, which is after your time window, interestingly.
The trap that a lot of people fall into is they believe in a scenario and they try to fit the facts into that scenario.
No, that's 100% true. It's 100% true. Making up math problems to fit your scenario.
This is where the math comes into play.
Right.
And by the way, math to some people implies precision. That is not the case here. Just because we're using math doesn't mean we're saying that someone arrived at exactly a specific time. We're actually using math to place boundaries on earliest or latest time to create a range during which they could have arrived. So what you do is you take, well, what's the fastest this person, given the conditions, could have driven, and you solve the problem there, and then you solve it for what's the slowest we think they would have driven, and that gives you your window of time. So we're not saying that because we're using math that we know all these times exactly and precisely. We're saying kind of the opposite.
Right, we're trying to get reasonable parameters within which it seems possible that he could have arrived.
So that's kind of where the math helps you understand what could or could not have happened.
So if we're just going to, just for a second, assume that both the dispatch log is correct and the police report is correct, and that Smith did arrive when the log says he did, approximately between 7:45 and 7:46, that would mean that for Witness A to have seen him, she would have had to have been driving 130 miles an hour.
Which we could probably say for a fact she wasn't.
It seems implausible to me.
So it's not that Smith couldn't have arrived at the time when you think Witness A was most likely there. He didn't arrive at a time that we think Witness A could have even possibly been there.
Right.
Yeah, so if the times and logs are roughly accurate, and Smith didn't get there until 7:46, and Witness A arrived at 7:35, 7:36, somewhere in there, as late as 7:37, that provides 9 minutes on scene for a police car to have arrived and left before Smith got there. So that car could have been there and he wouldn't even know, and he might be telling 100% the truth. It's also possible that an officer showed up and then saw there was no one there and then went on a search for someone. There's things that could have happened, and nobody necessarily needs to be lying for that to be the case.
Right.
So if you're trying to say that Smith's report of 7:45 and the dispatch log, his arrival time of 7:46, if you're trying to say that both of those are wrong, and his actual arrival time is 7:35, and you add plus or minus a couple of minutes to all those, adding plus or minus a couple of minutes doesn't make them line up. So to me, you're fitting your narrative, your timeline, the events to fit what you think happened, rather than following the data that's there, following the most likely sequence of events.